Hi, and welcome back to another video. I actually wasn't going to make a video today, but then I got to thinking about this idea, this analogy that I have. And imagine if you had this carpenter, and he called himself a carpenter, and he swore up and down, no, he's a real carpenter. But when you looked at what that man or woman could do, it wasn't consistent with what you would expect a carpenter to be able to do. Because we all would have expectations. And if you're a carpenter, we would expect that you would be pretty handy with a hammer and nails, and you would know how to cut boards and make measurements, and there would be certain benchmarks. There would be certain tasks and things that, expectations that we would be able to have of you if you were truly a carpenter, for us to call you a carpenter. So I was thinking of this, and I thought it would make a great example for the Jewish argument, which is that Jesus wasn't really the Messiah that they were looking for, and their reasons for believing in that is because there were certain expectations that they had, which weren't just arbitrary expectations. There were expectations that were rooted in the Old Testament Bible, messianic prophecies. So, and I guess that's probably where a lot of Christians get mixed up, is interpreting the Old Testament and citing these different proof texts, these different passages that they claim and swear are actually talking about the Messiah, when in fact they're not. There's areas in the Old Testament that would probably be less fruitful in locating information about the Messiah and what he was supposed to come and do, and what those expectations were. If you don't know, the Bible can be the Old Testament Bible can be broken down into different categories. You have the history, you have the laws, you have the wisdom literature, and you have the prophets. And you have the poetry, and I think I might have forgotten one, but I'm not certain. So you have to ask yourself, out of all those sections, which one is going to be the one that would be the most fruitful to look at, and would have the information on the Jewish Messiah. So, but if in reading those texts you aren't able to, your carpenter isn't able to meet all those benchmarks, isn't able to meet all those expectations, then does your carpenter still get the title? And essentially that's what Christians assert. And you say, well, how do you know that Jesus, clearly, Christians assert that Jesus accomplished this prophecy and that prophecy, and how can you say, well, here's the thing. Christians admit that Jesus didn't accomplish all of the things that the Messiah was supposed to do. Otherwise, there would be no need for a second coming. Because you say, well, why is Jesus coming back? Oh, well, he's going to take care of that one thing that he didn't do. Yeah, he's supposed to rapture the church and come back for his people. But at the same time, whenever you ask them, say, well, what about this, this prophecy, or what about this expectation? And they're like, oh yeah, well, he'll do that when he comes back in the second coming. And then you try to look for evidence of a second coming, and you can't find it. I mean, there are many Christians who try to cite the book of Daniel, and there's a certain passage in there, and I'll have to go into this in a later video more in depth, because I don't have my reference material with me, but that's tried to be cited that they see a story about someone coming in the clouds or to the clouds or something, and it's a story. I mean, when you really read it in context, the story is not about someone coming to earth. It's actually about someone going to heaven and standing before the throne room of God, and as opposed to that person coming back. It's just how they twist and manipulate the text to make it say like what they want to say, like a ventriloquist dummy. So, if Jesus Christ, admittedly by Christians, didn't accomplish all of the Jewish messianic expectations of what the Messiah was supposed to do while he was here, and they admit that by saying, well, he'll do it in the second coming. I mean, do you get the title before you do the job? I mean, can you really call yourself a carpenter if you don't know the first thing about swinging a hammer, and you can't build a house, you can't really put anything together? I mean, you're completely clueless out there. I mean, maybe you can do a couple things, maybe you can hold the board while somebody else, I mean, does that really make you a carpenter? I mean, I know, I thought it was kind of just an interesting analogy that shows, the parallel between how Christians assert that Jesus was the Messiah that the Jews were waiting for. It's amazing to me, because the Jews are like, no, we know our Bible, we know this is not our guy, and we know that there were certain expectations, and the world was supposed to be changed and look a certain way, and they're like, oh, well, that'll happen when Jesus comes back in the second coming. Well, there's little to no evidence to support that claim. I mean, where do you see that he's going to come back and change the world and transform it in such a way that you can visibly see that? Because that was one of the expectations, was the world will be transformed. And Christians are like, well, that's going to be done in the second coming. But that's just you trying to explain away the fact that you say Jesus was the Messiah and he doesn't do all the things he's supposed to do. So, there's a story I can share with you now that seems like might be appropriate. And basically the story goes along the lines of, there's this family that's missing this kid. And these people out on the West Coast say, hey, we saw your kid, and the kid, I guess, was on a milk carton like they used to do back in the 80s, maybe 90s too, I can't remember, but at one point they used to put missing kids on milk cartons, and of course now you see them at Walmart or whatever with the signs up, and so they're like, hey, our kid was missing, and they're like, this group of people called and said that they found our kid, and so they fly out to the West Coast and they get out there and they're like, they see the kid and they're like, this is not our kid. And then the people that said it was are like, no, this is your kid, and we found him. Look, see, he looks exactly the same. And the family's like, no, we know what our kid looks like, and this is not our kid. This is not. This is someone else. And then the Christians, of course, that's the people that called and said they found the kid, say, no, Jesus is the Messiah. This is really your Messiah. This is the one you've been waiting for. And it's like, can you not see the arrogance of that? Can you not see the fact that it makes absolutely no sense for another group of people to tell a group of people that came long before you did, that had their own text and had their own religion, Judaism, and sit there and tell them that, oh yeah, we're going to tell the Jews how it really is, and tell them that how mistaken they are, that all those silly Jews, they just got it wrong, they're part, Jesus really was the Messiah. It's like, and the Jews are like, in fact, no, this is not who we're looking for. These certain expectations were not met, and once those expectations are met, then that will be our Messiah. I mean, how do you tell another religion, how does Christianity tell Judaism that they got it wrong? And you say, well, damn, what about all the other, Jews for Jesus and all that? First of all, I don't put much faith in what they say, because if they would approach the Old Testament Bible, the prophecies, the way I've just laid it out to you, to look in the Old Testament and see if it's clear, concise, and consistently supports the Christian claim that Jesus was the Messiah. If you can find it in multiple places, and when looking at the attributes of God, like specifically with the Trinity, if you could actually go in and see, oh yeah, see God, and I don't mean reference that one part where it says, oh, and let us make man in our image. I mean, when you look at the attributes of God, it predominantly shows God as a singular being. It's not showing him as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. If you can find multiple references in the Old Testament Bible that support that claim, then I would be more inclined to believe someone that asserts that. But unfortunately, you can't. The Bible does not consistently support the Trinity belief, and it does not consistently support the belief that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. You can't even find the word Jesus Christ in the Old Testament, which I think is very suspect. So those are just a couple points that I wanted to make, that I don't think until you do the job, you don't get the title. That's the Jewish argument. And I think, again, it's rooted in a sound analysis of the Old Testament Bible. And I just don't think you can, with a clear conscience, sit there and say when the facts and the evidence is contrary to what you assert. So that's today's video. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.